Hi, and welcome to another episode of Who Said Photography. I am here with my two experts.
Lars
and Clinton. And today's question is...
Who said, when you photograph people in color, you photograph their clothes. When you photograph them in black and white, you photograph their souls?
We'll be right back with that answer. Okay, Lars, and the answer is...
Eddie Adams.
There we go. And who's Eddie Adams?
He was a famous photographer back in the 60s, 70s.
And he shot...
Film.
There's that four-letter word again. Not using that one. Ooh, hands are all wet. Actually, a good segue, because that's today's topic, is film.
I was just going to say, if you soup your own film, it's going to get wet.
Every time I'm going to use the word film, I'm going to go, please. Let's discuss it. Most guys look at film as kind of an expensive thing. If you're into photography, most of us start nowadays in digital. But film is not that expensive to actually get into.
Nope.
I was playing around this morning on Amazon. I go to Amazon, you go to eBay. I found a Nikon F2 for about $150 with two lenses.
Mm-hmm.
So on that side of it, if we consider that that's a 35 millimeter camera, and we want to get that in the 35 millimeter and the digital side, well, if we look at the Canon or the Sony, you're at, what's a body worth for the 6D on the Canon side, Clinton? Yeah, about $1,200, eh? I think.
For 6D? No, they're like about closer to, they're over 2,000.
No, well, the 6D Mark II. But if I just go to 6D,
yeah,
Sony the 7.
I think they're still about $18.99 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
and then if you look at like a Sony A7, I think is what?
Around 18.
Yeah.
So on that side of it, Mr. Frugal sitting in the corner there, film can actually be a less cost starting.
Especially if you're not sure what you want to use and where you want to go with equipment. Generally speaking, a lot of the older equipment is still compatible to the new stuff. Up until recently, the old and ultra stuff will come into Sony Digital, so if you weren't sure if you were interested in photography, going with an old Nikon or even an old Minolta, you could at least take your lenses forward with you a little bit.
But even if you've been shooting digital a while and you want to try something different, 35 millimeter Nikon, Canon, they're fairly easy, inexpensive, and you can pick them up. Like, you can go to eBay or whatever, things like that. So let's discuss. We've got the unit, we've got the camera. Now we've got to get the film. So we've got to get into the film. Now, film, on SD card, I can multiple use. Film is a one-shot kind of deal. Mm-hmm. So on that side of it, but film is not that expensive, I found. I spent this morning looking at a lot of these things. Film was not that expensive. Like B&H, I went to B&H because what the heck, you can find everything there. Mm-hmm. Film, a Canadian price, some of it was like $4, and Kodak film was like $4. Some was $3.35.
If you're buying it in Canada, it's going to be a little bit more money, and the cost of film has gone up. But you got to remember too that it's become more of a niche thing right now. Kodak used to have factories all over the place making film.
Yep.
Now they have maybe like one. And that's the big difference right there. So the cost has gone up, but you got to remember too that with film, unlike digital, you're going to be left with either a negative or a slide, and that's
we're going to go there in a minute. Well, yeah, we're going to go there in a minute because that's part of it. So if I go shoot a roll of film, I go in to get it developed by one of the developers around. It's another $8. So to me, film is nickeling and diming me. But you and I had a good conversation the other day, and I was, again, Googling it. Why can't you process your film at home? There's no reason why you can't process your film at home. So again, I'm cutting my costs down on a lot of these things. So what do we need to develop our own film at home, Lars?
Well, we're talking color or black and white?
Either.
Okay, so because there's a big difference.
Is there a big difference in the developer and the stopper?
Well, you got to remember one thing with when it comes to these two different film types is the chemistry for color film, whether it's color print film or color slide film, is not very human friendly.
Okay, so what do you mean by human friendly?
They can be carcinogenic.
Oh, color film.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, if you're not protected, you can develop
Okay, so your chemicals. You need a Wemyss background to. I'm sorry.
Pretty much, and
Wemyss. Anybody not understand Wemyss? Clinton, you know what Wemyss is?
I have seen.
Okay, because again, ex-military. Lars and I are both ex-military. I know exactly what Wemyss is. So I'm not sure if everybody else knows, but Wemyss is the information you get when you buy a chemical, and it will tell you whether it's carcinogenic, whether it's going to be bad for your hands, whether it's you need to be covered up, masked up, and things like that. So I'm sorry.
The big difference to me is if I was working with black and white, my hands could be in the chemistry, no problem. If I was working with color, I wouldn't want to do that. But the other thing too is temperature is very critical with color. So when you're doing color processing, very, very, very critical. So what you might have to do is either have a processor made for home use or use a water bath for all your chemistry. So it gets a little bit more complicated. Black and white, on the other hand, generally, most often you're developing at about average temperature is about 68 degrees. You can be off a few degrees up or down, and it's not as critical.
Okay, so let's again, because we've had this conversation. Let's say, could I develop my film in a small room in my house, in my bathroom, something like that?
Yeah.
Just have to kind of turn off the light. Now, I notice a lot of these places used to have a red light, so red light, I'm presuming, doesn't show up.
That's only for printing, man.
That's only. See, I've got other things I've looked up online on the printing side of it to cut costs there as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we're going to discuss on that one. But right now, so for film, to develop your film, again, you can take it to the store. Mm-hmm. Some places, and even still, depending on the film that you're shooting, some stores can't do it. So I believe C41.
Yeah.
We can basically get anywhere, but the other one is
E6.
E6.
Yeah, for slides.
For slides, yeah. So that's a little bit more difficult to get done. So then you got to hunt there. So a lot of, if you're going to go back to film, digital, I can walk in any store. I can pick up a digital camera, pick the stuff up. I can head out the store. I can go take my pictures. I can come back and get them either printed or I can look after them myself.
Easy peasy.
And you and we did this yesterday. With film, I've got to do a little bit more research. There's a little bit more involved into it. But I'm actually thinking it's a little bit less expensive in certain times. Now there's going to be a cutoff where your film is going to cost you more than digital, but that's a long ways down the road. You would have to shoot, I think I worked it out today, almost 250 rolls of film to where it even kind of gets close if you do it properly. So realistically, if you take it into the store, it's about $8 to get it developed. That's just the development. That's not printing. Mm-hmm. That's about $8 to get it developed. So from there, you can, but you can do all this at home if you're shooting black and white pretty easily. As you said, all I need is my bathroom and a few chemicals.
That's right.
The cost, because I was looking this up online, it's amazing. I didn't look up the prices, but you don't need a lot. You need, to develop it, you need the developer and the stopper and a fixer. Developer, fixer, and stopper?
Developer, stop bath, fix, you could actually leave out the stop bath and just use water.
You just use water?
But stop bath there's nothing wrong with going with that. What the stop bath does is it stops development.
Right. You have to stop the oxidation of the film.
Water will slow it down. It won't stop it completely.
Right.
But some folks, I've done it myself, where you dump out the developer, you pour in some water, pour it out, pour in the fix. Seems to work pretty good. But if you're a little bit more critical on your development, then you want to use a stop bath.
Right. But you have timings on this as well, right? How long you leave it in the developer, how long you...
Yep.
Okay, and that's going to affect...
And the film has to be agitated as well, right?
Oh, okay. There we go. Walk me through this process, if you're doing it in your bathroom. Clinton, you got a spare bathroom?
Yep.
It's not overly difficult. The big thing is you need a light, tight place to load the film onto a reel and into a developing tank. Now, most developing tanks are what we call daylight tanks. What that simply means is once the film's loaded into it, we can actually safely do our developing in daylight, because the way the tank's designed, it doesn't let light to get into the tank, right?
Right.
So you just need a dark place just to load the film. That's it. Once you've got the film loaded in, then what you're going to do is, I've seen some people use, pre-soak the film in water. You don't really have to do that. You pour the developer in. What you're going to do is you're going to give the tank a sharp wrap.
Yeah, but you can buy little containers, that you can throw the film in. Do you need the film stretched out, or is it still actually rolled and then developed?
If you're using this stuff,
yeah,
35 millimeter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to use a reel, right?
Right. Okay. So you're going to take it out of there and you're going to wrap it onto a reel.
And
then that reel goes into.
Exactly. There's two different styles. There's either the Kinderman style, which is basically a stainless steel reel and tank, or there's a Patterson style, which is basically a plastic reel and tank. Now, the Patterson one's the easiest to load. You feed the leader into the to start it, and you just twist it like that, and it just loads it right in.
Right in for you.
When it's in the tank, you pour the developer in, you give it a sharp wrap, it dislodges any bubbles. And then what you do is, depending on your developer, you might have a certain time that you have to develop it for. So much agitation, let's say you might have to agitate every 30 seconds or every minute, whatever your developer is.
Okay.
And there's lots of recipes online. So and believe it or not, with black and white film, you can play around with your developer and get some different, I wouldn't say effects, because it's not really what I'm looking at. You can either get developers, combinations that will actually give you sharper negative.
Right.
Other ones will give you more accutance, which means it's going to be a lot easier to grain focus. Right. And larger. We don't do that too much anymore. Some will increase, some developments will increase or decrease your contrast.
Oh,
right.
Okay, yeah.
Things like that. So there's a lot of little things there. If you were getting the black and white, and that's, for me primarily, that's a big draw is black and white. I would say, develop the film yourself, and then get it scanned either yourself or at a lab.
Well, see, that's the next portion of it. But I have a question for Clinton. Do you ever develop your own film, Clinton?
Yeah.
Why not?
Growing up in the States when I was growing up.
Oh, okay.
And living in an apartment, limited space again.
Yeah, okay. So have you looked at it and thought about it?
Started dabbling. Haven't done too much research into it yet.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I've been doing it since I was a kid.
Well, you've been doing it, yeah. Well, because basically you're a military photographer, so you've been doing it for 16 years in the military, and pretty soon digital wasn't around when you were.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw something in on the color side. I wouldn't do it myself.
Oh, really?
After having done it for years?
Yeah.
I would take it someplace where, somebody. The big thing with color, not as bad with C41, but with E6 is consistency.
Okay.
It's very temperature critical, very, very much so, and whatnot. So I would rather just take it someplace.
Words to the wise there, I guess. Yeah. Do not develop your own colored film.
And you can. There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. It's tricky.
E6 is 7 chemical steps.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And C41's a little bit less, but it's still a lot more than you would with black and white. So.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. I'll take that under advisement if I ever go to film 35 millimeter. But also now I'm understanding that you can actually buy film in bulk. So you don't have to go and pay $3. You can actually buy film in bulk, and you can roll your own and give the canisters back. Have you tried that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Where'd you buy your film from?
Oh, usually a big camera store that
okay, they would have sold it? I'm not sure. I'm presuming maybe.
Ask me if I would do it again.
Go ahead, ask me. Go ahead.
Okay. No? I did this a few years back, actually quite a few years back, as a cost-saving thing. I was doing slide presentations for an organization I was involved with a cycle club, and I put a slideshow on every year. And just to keep costs down, I would roll my own, so to speak. The one bad thing about that is you are susceptible to more scratching on the film.
Oh, okay.
Right? And let me tell you, when you're trying to load a 100-foot roll of expensive color film into a film loader and things go south on you, that's a lot of money in your hands right there. Right? So it's much easier to buy it pre-rolled. The big thing with that is you can buy film in individual rolls. You can buy them in 3-packs. You can buy them in 5-packs. And that's just the amateur emulsions. And when you get into the professional films, they usually come in, depending on what kind of film you're buying. If you're buying 35mm film, Pro Packs of 10 or 20. Now, Kodak usually sold it by 20 rolls, Pro Packs. Fuji was 10-roll Pro Packs. And that's how I used to get my slide film years ago, back in the 70s and 80s. 10-roll Pro Packs or 20-roll Pro Packs. If you're shooting medium format film, then you're looking at 5-roll Pro Packs. You can save some money. If you do the little calculation on that, you can save some money that way.
Well, it brings up another question is I know 35mm is still popular, and we can do that at home. Can I develop my medium format at home as well?
Certainly.
You still the same way?
Yep. Actually, good thing on that is the Patterson tanks. The actual reels will actually come apart, and you can actually spread them out so they're either going to take 120, which is medium format film, or 35mm.
Oh, okay.
So that one tank you buy, if you buy a tank that takes one reel, it'll do either 35 or 120.
Yeah, okay. All right. So now that we've got it developed, what do we want to do with it? See, if I take it to the store, they'll print it for me.
You can still get that done.
Well, yeah, you can print and you can developer, but this is one of the things where I thought was quite interesting, because I was Googling this morning, and Clinton and I were talking about it earlier, was the fact that now that I have the negative done at home, basically all I need is a scanner. A scanner is $75. So, I don't even know.
Okay, so scanners, totally different world. And
yeah, but I can take my negative film, I can scan it in.
So you know when you buy your digital camera, you know that next year they're going to come out with a newer version that's improved, and the scanners, they don't do that quite as much. And the other thing too, a cheaper scanner means you're going to have a much limited dynamic range.
You might only be 16-bit color instead of 52, but it's
22. Well, yeah.
But also the dynamic range, right? So you
want
something.
Buy a $135 scanner.
Well, I'll give an example. London Drugs, for example, they carry some of the Cano scans, and they also carry some of the Epsons, and they carry versions of the Epson up to the V600, and they're all good scanners. But when you want to do something with that records much broader dynamic range, then you get into the Epson V700, which is a special order scanner, and that's about $1,200 for that guy. That's a flatbed. And also, if you're doing 35mm film, I did some research on this too. There's a British company called Plustech that actually makes a dedicated film scanner. You can still buy nowadays. And they actually make a few different versions of it for 35mm film, and they range in price from about 500 to about 800 Canadian on eBay or online.
Yeah, well, I was looking up on Amazon, and there's
Amazon, you can get them too.
Just a little unit. You can take your negative, and you can run the negative. And it takes a negative, and it turns it into takes a JPEG. I'm presuming it scans it into
Pacon makes one as well, and I think there's a company called Pacific Image that makes one as well.
But so that's another way I can get my images digitalized, fairly inexpensive.
Yeah.
Because if I go to the store to do it again, I'm paying $8 for development. I'm paying $8 to have it put onto a CD, or 39 cents, 50 cents a picture sort of idea. Yeah. Right now, in my mind, is I'd rather have it turned onto a CD or a jump drive or whatever, because it's going to be a lot less money in the long run, because then I can share my photos sort of idea. If I was to have them printed, I still got to get them scanned in, so why not just go directly to the scanner immediately? That's kind of like my idea. But a lot of times, like, I look at things like this and go, the unit itself, what's a lens worth? I know my last lens that I bought for my Sony was $1,200. Mm-hmm. That's almost 150 rolls of film.
I'll give you a good example here. I remember this years ago. There was a fellow I knew. And he was shooting film, and he had a Pentax with a couple lenses. He was always looking for other things, but he's always looking to get a deal. He was very frugal. In fact, you think that some people would label the guy as cheap, but he was just like, if he saw a used lens, he was always trying to get a little bit less money. So, funny thing was, he got rid of all of his film gear and bought a digital SLR. He bought actually a Canon 5D Mark II body with about $6,000 worth of lenses. Now, at the time, that Canon 5D Mark II was about, between $300 and $3,500?
Yep.
And he spent that with no qualms. Kind of different, isn't it? When you look at the mindset from the film world, and you get into digital, now suddenly it's like, oh, well, I'll just spend all this money, because his thought process was, well, I'm not buying film anymore, so this is going to be cheap in the long run. In the long, long run. But the thing with film is you're not going to be shooting the same way as you do with digital. Not at all.
Not at all.
You take more time to compose your image. You take more time to think about your image. You're not just shooting off 20 pictures and going, hey, I think I got it. You're sitting there, you're looking, you're thinking, you're contemplating. And by the time you pull that trigger, it could be 15, 20 minutes has gone by the time you've got your composure the way you want it.
I do that now. I do it.
Again, a lot of your training is back from film. A lot of how you were taught is back from film. And that's one thing I noticed. The people who grew up knowing film, they'll take that extra 4 or 5 minutes to look at their scene and compose it. Whereas people that grew up with digital will walk by and go click. And we've seen that on some of the walks that we've done.
Well, yeah, but usually a lot of times that's from inexperienced people that have just bought in the camera sort of idea. So on that side of it, it's a learning curve like anything else. Yeah. But I also noticed, like on yours, I believe the same as Lars's film camera here, like my digital equipment, the aperture, ISO, and shutter speed are all basically set in my camera. Most of the film, I'm presuming you've got the same thing. Well, certainly your aperture is on the lens, yeah, which is totally different. So it makes you think a little bit more. Your aperture setting is actually in the lens. Mm-hmm. So your controls on how you control the camera is going to be a little bit different than how you do it on the digital side.
No histogram.
Oh, what? No histogram. Well, that's a good point, because you don't get that instant feedback or instant result.
Here's a good thing too. When you're looking at film and deciding what to do, what to shoot, think of it from this point of view. You're looking at digital cameras have a dynamic range nowadays of about 16 stops, right? Which is quite broad when you think about it. When you go to film, with slide film, you got about a 6-stop range. With color negative or black and white negative film, you've got about a 10 to 11 stop range. Probably about 10. So the big thing with that is it has less dynamic range, but the big thing with negative film, whether it's black and white or color, is that you have a lot of latitude. You can go over or under and still get a usable image. Though, a caution you there, if you're gonna think about either under or overexposure, always lean towards overexposure. It's more forgiving that way. You can go over by about 3 stops or more in some cases and still have a very usable image, but if you underexpose too much, then you have what we call a thin negative. And when you develop your film, the more exposure you get, the more denser the negative gets. If your film is underexposed, you have a very, very thin negative. That means there's not much detail. You can't print as much. So with color negative film, or black and white negative film, you can actually guess at exposure and actually do quite well. I've done that quite a few times where I've actually just made a guess because either I forgot my light meter at home, or it was one of those situations where it just worked. And again, back in the day, you had a much better understanding of how exposure worked.
Yeah. Well, you had to.
You had to, yeah.
Well, you kind of have to. Although film can be less expensive, another part of your hobby, it can, if you keep fouling up, I was going to use a different word, fouling up, you have to be careful because those pictures just don't turn out. I've noticed that as I develop other people's work and who are shooting film, it's like an awful lot of them are just green, and they're not understanding how to actually use the camera
and the other side of it. Is over-tightening the film. You get stretch marks, you get bleed if you over-tighten. That film needs to be sitting nice. Because a lot of people, when they put it on the old one, push they overwind it.
Oh, really?
And that can create
You could overwind, but yeah, okay. I've used film a year.
On this one you can't, because it's automatic load.
Right.
But on these guys you can.
You can actually over-tighten the overload.
Yeah.
Isn't that an interesting way of doing it? So how do you meter with your camera, Clinton?
On that one? It's actually got a built-in light meter.
Does it?
Yep, it has a battery for it. Can't find the battery at the moment, but
I'm sure it's on the film side somewhere.
It uses a 400 mercury cell.
Yeah.
Which is hard to find.
Yeah. So right now it has no light meter, but if I had a battery, it has one built in. This guy here, being a 90s camera, does have light meter.
Oh, actually, it does come with a light meter.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So how would you? Well, see, you and I had this discussion before on metering on medium format film. When I worked in studio,
where's my spot meter?
Yeah, well, when I worked in studio work, I had a light meter. Even though there was a light meter in my camera, I used the handheld light meter because I wanted that different light between my subject and the backdrop, and that's how I did it. Handy little device, but that light meter didn't work outside. It works outside, but I'm only a foot from the camera. I'm not metering those mountains.
Exactly, and you're using what they call an incident meter, which basically what it does is it measures the light that's falling on your subject. So, handy in the studio, or handy in a controlled situation, but when you're out in the wide open, where the light could be going you could be looking at mountain range miles away, you can't meter the light that's falling on those mountains, because you're not there. So, what these cameras have, just like your digital camera there and these ones here, they have what they call a reflective meter. It measures the light that's reflected from your subject.
From the subject back in.
So, technically, if you were in a perfect world, an incident meter would give you a much more accurate reading because it's measuring the light that's actually falling on your subject. So your subject's reflectance doesn't have any effect on that. So whether it's black or white, it's still going to be exposed properly. But these guys now, because the old cameras like this guy here, which uses a center-weighted meter, this thing here is calibrated that it's going to measure something and produce 18% gray, whether it's black or white. Which means if I'm photographing the snow, I have to overexpose by about a stop and a half.
Well, certainly you have to do that in the digital world as well. Snow's white. You're just going to blow it all. It's like shooting a wedding.
I don't want to do it. Exactly.
Who came up with white wedding dresses?
And black tuxes.
And black tuxes. Like, oh, come on, people. Can we get any more?
But that being said, it's not that difficult to figure out. You can use, I met people for years that would meter off their hand and just open up just slightly.
Something.
Or something like that. Or they would use an 18% gray card, meter off that, put it in the scene, or find something that was actually medium gray.
Medium gray, yeah.
And meter off that, yeah. But it's going to change from time to time. When I use a spot meter, what I was doing, I was metering everything. I was trying to meter what was the brightest highlight that I wanted to show detail in, and the darkest shadow that I wanted to show detail in. And then I would meter a middle tone, and I would try to figure out, what my contrast range was between the two, and then average my exposure for that.
Okay, that makes sense. But you know what? We've run out of time, guys.
So we have to talk more, I guess, on this.
We can certainly bring it back, because we certainly didn't talk about the cameras and the guts of the cameras and things like that. We can certainly do that again. But I want to thank you guys for showing up.
Thank you.
I want to thank Shaw. I want to thank Cumberland Creative Company for our studio settings. And we'll see you next time, guys, on Who Said Photography. Bye.
Bye-bye.